don't mind.
I mind terribly.
That way we can hear you and everything. Thank you.
Why do people want to hear me?
Hey, you signed up for this document.
Okay. Get everybody over here. Giving them 3 minutes already. Guess that's enough, right? I want more people. I want more people. Come on, everybody. Everybody. Hey, everybody, come over here. We're talking about the budget. Okay, much better. Much better. We have a mic. Is it on?
Just want to take it off mute. Okay, great.
Okay. Hello, I'm David Maston with Maston Space Systems. And my first thing is I'm going to talk about the NASA budget. But before I do, I want to I want to mention something about NASA budget. I'm very biased about the proposed budget because it is essentially what I asked for when I went to DC and said, here's what we need to be doing. So yes, it's my fault that we're not going to the moon, except that we weren't going to the moon anyway. A couple things about NASA budget. First of all, as the Augustine Committee determined, there was no chance under the current fiscal policy of the United States government that Constellation could be completed on time, on budget, or any time, ever. It was not going to happen. Human spaceflight was going to end in 2015 if we continued with the Constellation program. I'd say that again. Constellation meant that human spaceflight was going to end for the United States in 2015.
And why is that?
Because in 2015, ISS had to come down in order to fund enough of Constellation to even move it forward at all. Ares 1 was not going to be ready until 2017 at the earliest. Given some of the technical challenges they faced, I'm not even sure that 2017 was realistic. Ares 5 was not going to be ready until sometime in the mid-2020s. Orion would have been available about the same time, but there still was not enough money to build Altair. And that goes out past 2030. And that's all in the Augustine Commission report. You can go look it up online. So the reality is I'm seeing a lot of news stories saying, oh, no, we're not going back to the moon. No, we were never going to the moon. What we are doing with the new NASA budget, I say we loosely, since I am a supporter of it, we are creating a spacefaring society and creating the spacefaring infrastructure instead. Commercial crew. First of all, we're extending ISS out to 2020 at a minimum. So we're going to continue having a destination in space that we can send U.S. astronauts to on a regular basis. The 5 thing just doesn't seem to work for me. Must be 7. Commercial crew, if we believe what SpaceX and United Launch Alliance and several other companies are saying, we should have commercial crew capabilities by 2013. SpaceX says 2 years from the date that NASA signs the contract. I'm going to say it's 3 years just because there's way too many times the industry said 2 years and it never panned out.
That's what business development has promised on behalf of the poor engineers who have to make it happen.
But anyway, hopefully we'll see a wonderful, successful Falcon 9 launch in the near future.
Thank you.
Let's see, what else is there? So a lot of what else is going to be going on with the new NASA budget is a lot of research and development into things that will enable us to get to the moon, enable us to get to near-Earth objects, enable us to get to Mars at some point in the future. I hate saying some point in the future, you know, as Bolden was constantly being reminded as he was on the Hill this past week, we do want some kind of firm dates. But unfortunately, our technology level is not to the point where we can give firm dates for getting to Mars. We just don't know enough about the space environment and what it's going to take to put astronauts into a 9-month trajectory to Mars, several months on Mars, and then however long it takes to get back. So in general, that's the basis of everything, and I want to open it up for questions, comments, whatever. No. Anyone?
I'll bring up some of the constellation stuff. I've kind of torn both ways on it. One is that they said, Augustine Commission said that it would be $3 billion more per year to go anywhere, Lagrange points or near-Earth asteroids or what have you. That won't get you to the moon, but $3 billion will get you somewhere, and it'll keep the space station up to 2020. And if you actually want to go somewhere, like the surface of the moon, I can't remember what the number was. It was like 6 to 9 per year.
Yes.
And by the way, adjust your expectations on how long it's going to take you to get there, because it's more like 2022, not 2020. So. So I think part of it was realizing that, all right, in today's climate, everyone will probably get harpooned for saying, let's raise the NASA budget to $30 billion a year. Because, you know, as everyone knows, the NASA budget is 25% of all federal spending, and they get too much money already. Not the 0.05% that
Right.
Exactly. So getting past that, they knew that it was kind of, you were not going to be able to sell that much of an increase. So if we kept it the same, we're not going to get anywhere. So what I see as their solution, as ugly as it is like, all right, we have a lot of money, we have a lot of smart people. Let's put it to the best use we can. And unfortunately, that doesn't mean we have any bold, exciting place to go. But there's lots of interesting things that we do that we know will be useful someday.
Yes. I should say, this is not my idea of the perfect budget. My idea of the perfect budget is we get 25% of the budget. But realistically, I think this is the best we have available to us.
Is there any scenario for heavy lift? I mean, I haven't read all the fine tuning or anything. I mean, how does that even play into the foreseeable future?
Well, within the aerospace community, it's not clear. There is no consensus around how much heavy lift is actually necessary. The Augustine Commission said that we need something like 75 metric tons, and one of their options was an Ares 5 light. One of my propulsion engineer at Mass and Space Systems, who also happens to be one of the world's foremost experts on on-orbit servicing, suggests that we don't need it at all. The existing medium-lift vehicles, the Atlas V and the Delta IV Heavy, are more than adequate to actually conduct meaningful campaigns to Moon and Mars. But that requires on-orbit servicing. And actually, NASA knows quite a bit about how to do on-orbit servicing. I mean, we've got the ISS. It's been going around for a number of years now, and we're building it up, and we know how to build things. The recent Hubble repair mission demonstrated that, yeah, we can build stuff in space. That's not a problem. Or fix them, or what have you. We can definitely turn wrenches in space. That's not an issue. So part of what we're looking for in the budget, or I should say, part of what NASA is planning on doing, is figuring out, are there some technologies that we can do that can do heavy lift. At the same time, can we do enough on-orbit servicing that we don't need heavy lift? And we're sort of exploring options and figuring out, do we really need that? The biggest problem with heavy lift is you build it for one mission, and then what good is it? That can be really difficult. We were trying to get the idea that you can use a single rocket for multiple missions, or better yet, use lots of different rockets for lots of different missions.
The concern I have about the new budget is the possibility of bait and switch. That we get commercial crew, we get the light access to ISS, but Congress zeroes out all the other future R&D and invests it in high-speed trains, or new generation nuclear power, or solar panels, and we don't get the R&D part of it. So we end up with $4 million for commercial crew and cargo, and that's it.
I don't believe the Texas, Alabama, or Florida delegations will allow that to happen, and considering that they pretty much own the science and technology committees, and specifically the NASA portions of the appropriations and authorization committees, I'm not worried about that.
We got to get them to go along with this in the first place.
That is a bigger challenge. I think some of them are actually starting to come around. I was just up on the Hill briefing some people, and I think they're going to start coming around soon. They're starting to realize that it's ugly and it's messy and no one's going to like it, but there aren't any other options, really.
I'd like to hear your opinion on whether there exists today a commercial launch industry, or is it really a government launch industry? And I'll give you the counterexample. There certainly is a commercial space-related business in telecommunications. You know, the whole geo belt, and data systems and weather monitoring. That's decidedly completely commercial interest. The government has very little to do with it, but regulating it. It's private customers, private businesses, and fair market value that drives all that stuff. But I don't see that as what launch vehicles are today. But with the way that the budget is laid out, it looks like that's what they want to try to get to. But do we have a commercial launch industry today, or will we have one in 2 years once the funding is started?
Well, there's actually two questions in there. Actually, there's a bunch of different questions in there. A couple of them I'll take on. First of all, commercial launch industry, yes, there is. As of when Falcon 1 put a Malaysian satellite into orbit. That was purely commercial.
They did that before government dollars, I think, were ever involved in SpaceX. Is that true?
The government dollars involved in SpaceX did not go to development of Falcon 1.
Yeah.
It was all towards Dragon. So, yeah, that's like the only pure commercial. I take that back. There's some orbital missions. Orbital Sciences back in the early 90s actually had some stuff where they did it without government funding.
It was the Malaysian government's satellite that paid. The Corporation of Malaysia. Yes.
So I think what we have is we actually, and part of what we mean by commercial crew in the budget proposal is that we go from the traditional model of how Atlas and Deltas were developed, which is, huge amounts of money go into the development program, and it's pretty much all owned by the Air Force or whatever government agency. And even the launch itself is heavily subsidized, even for some of those commercial carriers. I mean, launch out of government installations. The commercial part of it is supposed to be, instead of doing cost-plus contracts, we're buying a ticket. We don't care how you get them there, but you're supposed to get them there. And when you don't get them there, we want a refund. So that's a lot of it. That's sort of the differentiator there. And remember, even the shuttle is actually launched by a commercial interest right now.
Is there any part of the budget for reducing jet noise? The aeronautics?
Yes, there's actually quite a bit more added to the aeronautics budget. I don't know as much detail about that because that's not my business, but
Capsules and landers, long-term capsules, are they in the budget? I mean, something to take you to an asteroid or to the moon?
Well, Orion's gone. That's as part of Constellation. There are no other capsules or other spacecraft to take a human out there right now.
Working on it.
There's still a lot of details. Obviously, part of that commercial crew thing is hopefully maybe we can do something with Dragon or one of the other proposed and being worked on spacecraft. So
I will admit to that there is a long way to go.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So how do you think that the traditional primes, Boeing, Lockheed, are going to fare in this new world order?
They're going to fare. The traditional primes are going to fare very well, and that's because, well, actually, if you look at the recent CC Dev announcement, which came out roughly the same time as the budget, all the traditional primes are involved. So, you have Boeing is in there. I can't remember if Lockheed was in there or not. I think they are. Yeah. And several of the concepts are going up on the United Launch Alliance vehicles. So the traditional primes are all there, all represented, and they're all getting money out of it. And I do have to say, there was some pushing involved to get them to figure out that they need to be doing this. But they're on board now.
What is ATK going to do?
ATK is going to continue making a huge amount of profit selling bullets to soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what they do with a 5-segment solid, I don't care.
Could be a very big bullet.
Oh, that is actually one of the concerns with the budget is from the Department of Defense side. The reason the shuttle uses those particular solid boosters so that ATK can build large solid boosters that can be used for ICBMs.
It's either more or less relevant since the Titan IV is gone, which
So-
is the other destination for those.
Yeah.
I think one of the exciting things about the budget, the proposal, I should say, if it were to pass, is that it, in theory, at least frees NASA to work on all the things that are too hard, too risky, too time-consuming for commercial industry to work on. But I think no one has yet done a good job of telling the engineers at NASA what the hell that means. And I see that as that could be a way that gets the workforce really inspired rather than really depressed like they seem to be.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing out of this budget, and Will is absolutely right, we haven't explained it very well. What this means is that the engineers and scientists at NASA are supposed to be doing the hardest, most challenging, difficult things that us commercial guys are going to look at and say, no way I'm putting my money in that. Too risky. So that means that NASA's going to have to be the best and brightest. I was mentioned at an earlier panel that there's sort of a mythology that NASA is all of the best and brightest. When in fact they aren't. But under this budget, they're going to have to be. They're going to be the ones who really need to really push on the frontier and not continue doing the same things for 40 years now.
So in addition to like fast air and maybe even on-orbit servicing, what do you sort of see as some of those areas that are too hairy for you to look at right now for SpaceX, but that NASA can start working on, as soon as this budget passes?
On-orbit servicing, autonomous landing and hazard avoidance technologies, thrust augmented nozzles, or other, even advanced chemical concepts. Aerospikes have not been done yet. Who knows? There's such a long list. There's such a huge long list. The biggest things are also figuring out how long can humans stay outside the Van Allen belts, and at what level of risk, and are there ways of mitigating that, and what are the best ways? We still don't understand the radiation environment outside the Van Allen belts all that well. So,
or at least how humans respond to them.
Oh, yeah, especially how humans respond to it. Yes.
So is it important to win public support for this new mission that's yet to be defined? And how do we do that?
So yes, it is very important that we win public support. And part of it, I think, is explaining that, hey, what we're doing is saying NASA is not space in toto. NASA is in pushing the boundary of space. And it should be exciting because we're creating a spacefaring society as opposed to sending a single missile to the moon.
But the problem with that and selling it is that it doesn't have the familiar ring of a destination and a date on the calendar. And that's the mode of operation that everyone's used to and comfortable with and inspired by. And, that's where everyone's banging their fist on the table. Where are you going and when you're going to get
So what's the Department of Defense's big, major date and mission end goal?
Excellent point. World peace.
Why do we need it?
Well, right, you could argue that DARPA gets a fair amount of money, and the public has no idea that it exists. The general public doesn't know, but they haven't been billed as people with a destination, right? DARPA simply to pick stuff up.
Well, the Department of Defense only gets destinations as crises arrive.
Right.
So it's easy to point. We can point to Iraq, we can point to Afghanistan right now. 10 years ago, we could point to the, Eastern Europe. But, those are the minor things, and those aren't. We just say, well, it's for the defense of the country. This is for the establishment of a spacefaring society. Why can't we just say that? This is everybody gets to go.
So do you think NASA just becomes kind of like a space DARPA?
A what?
Like they're kind of just like a space DARPA. Like they're just these huge R&D.
I want to say yes, but I can't quite because of what DARPA really is. DARPA is really, truly they're the organization that does the really crazy research that, as we got informed upon being denied a SBIR contract once, your proposal's not risky enough.
But to that point, you're saying like NASA needs to be repurposed, or not repurposed, but refocused, and really honed in on doing the dangerous stuff is what you're saying. But NASA, I'm 30. NASA's been risk averse my entire life. Are you saying that an organization that is so insanely risk averse and feels that a single failure threatens their entire funding structure will now restructure and only do things that?
I'm not saying that it's got to do something that's risky and dangerous. I'm not going to go. We've been down that path. I was a big supporter of doing the planetary missions, the cheap, often quick, and yeah, you're going to have failures. And we saw what happened with that, which is a whole bunch of NASA people got called in front of Congress when they hit their goal for failing. So, no, there's a certain amount of quote-unquote risk that you can take without being risky and still being risk-adverse, and that's not a problem. Yes, they're going to take on a little more risk than I'm willing to take on as a commercial entity, but that's... You think NASA's conservative? Man, you see how our investors are.
There was Paul Scutis had an excellent discussion of public perception in NASA and why NASA should care a lot less about it. He said over the history of all of NASA's existence, the public acceptance of what it's been doing between 50 and 55%. And it has no correlation really to what was going on.
Yeah.
So, if at your best and at your worst, you're moving 5% band, it really doesn't matter what you're doing. So just do whatever you're going to do and don't worry about what people think about it. And you'll probably make a lot more progress.
Yeah. You have a comment?
It seems that the risk is also, the toleration of risk is directly related to the goal of the mission. Because if the mission was like, we got to get to the moon before the Russians, then you're like, the whole nation's pushing, and then the risk is approached in the sacrifice that we're going to make in order to reach this goal. But if the mission or the goal is just to have easy access to low Earth orbit, then you don't want any risk at all, because that's contrary to easy access and low. If there's any risk, then it's not easy access. So,
Right.
I think NASA got, at least the generation of the shuttle is that it's this amazingly huge, complex system that's, just by the laws of nature is going to fail every now and then. But that's contrary to its stated mission is to be completely worry-free and get to orbit. So those are mutually contradicting goals.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a budget line item for the Russians?
There is. For flying our astronauts on Russian, yeah, there is.
And for assistance?
There has been for many years now.
And assistance for maintaining the space station?
What do you mean assistance for?
Maintaining it. Equipment, our equipment that's on board goes bad. We repair.
Well, it's all a part of keeping ISS going.
Because it really is a discussion.
What's the best thing about it?
You want to be mic'd, or you want me to be mic'd?